Hello from the underground. How are you? Today, let's have some coffee. Let's have some music. And let us continue with Balzac's �𝐥𝐝 𝐆𝐥𝐝. On page 2000. On page HAL 9000. Cool. Vautrin began to smile diabolically and applied his savage logic to the situation. "And do you really believe," he exclaimed, "that a young man of fashion can live in the Rue Neuve Sainte-Geneviève in the mansion Vauquer, an exceedingly respectable boarding house, certainly, in every respect, but something less than fashionable? It is solid and substantial. It is blessed in the warmth of its overflowing hospitality. It is proud to be a temporary transit mansion house of the Rastignac, but still it is the Rue Neuve Sainte-Geneviève. It has nothing to do with luxury. It is purely patriarchalorama. If you want to cut a dash in Paris, my young friend," Vautrin went on, in a paternally bantering way, "you must have 3 houses. You must have 3 horses, a Tilbury for the morning, and a brougham for the evening, 9,000 francs, all for your conveyance. You would be unworthy of your fate if you spent less than 3,000 francs for your tailor, 600 for perfumery, 100 crowns at your bootmaker's, 100 crowns for hats, and for your laundress she will relieve you of another 1,000 francs. A young man of fashion must not fail to be extremely fastidious about their linen. How many people look beyond a nice clean shirt? Love. And the church need fine clothes on their altar. That's 14,000 francs. I'm saying nothing about what you will pay for your losses at cards, bets, presents. You can't budget for less than 2,000 francs for pocket money. I've led that sort of life, and I know what it takes. All those things are absolutely necessary. And 300 louis for your grub and 1,000 francs for a roosting place. Well, my lad, we have to fork out our little 25,000 francs a year, or we find ourselves in the gutter, in the mud, and people are laughing at us. And it's goodbye to our career, our success, and our mistress. I'm forgetting your valet and your groom. Is Christophe to carry your love letters? Will you write them on the paper you use now? It would be suicidal. Believe the word of an old fellow who has had plenty experience," he added, his bass voice deepening and increasing in volume. "You must either betake yourself virtuously to a garret and wed yourself to your work, or choose another way." And Vautrin winked at Eugene, with a leer at Mademoiselle Taillefer, which recalled and recapitulated all the seductive arguments, all the seed he had planted in the student's mind for its corruption. Several days went by, and Rastignac spent them in a gay round of pleasures. He dined nearly every evening with Madame de Nucingen and escorted her wherever she went. He came back to the boarding-house at 3 or 4 in the morning, and rose at noon to put on his fine clothes and go for a walk at the Bois with Delphine, if the sun was shining, squandering his time without a thought of its value, with a greedy thirst for all the seductions of luxury, and a mind as wide open to absorb all it could teach him as the flowers of a date palm to receive the fertilizing pollen. He played for high stakes, won or lost large sums of money, and ended by taking the extravagant life of a young man about town as a matter of course. Out of his first winnings, he had repaid 1,500 francs to his mother and sisters, and sent handsome presents with the money. Although he had announced his intentions to leave the Maison Vauquer at the end of January, found him still there, and still without plans for departure. Young men are nearly all subject to a law which is inexplicable on the face of it, but is actually due to their very youth and the ardor with which they throw themselves into the pursuit of pleasure, rich or poor. Rich or poor, they never have any money for the necessaries of life, but they can always find it to gratify their fancies. They are wasteful of anything obtained on credit, and thrifty if they have to pay cash down. If they cannot get everything they want, they seem to take their revenge by scattering all they can get to the winds. For example, to put it plainly, a student takes much more care of his hat than he does his coat. A tailor makes a large profit, and so is prepared to wait for his money, while the total costs of a hat is so small that the hatter is not ready to be accommodated about it, and in fact is one of the most difficult of the whole tribe with whom the student is forced to come to terms. The young man in the balcony of the theatre may display a resplendent waistcoat to the opera glasses of a pretty woman, but it is doubtful if he has any socks. The hosier is another of the weevil's eating holes in his purse. Rastignac was no exception to the general rule. His purse was always empty of rent for Madame Vauquer, and always full when vanity demanded it. The index of the state of his financial fluctuated madly with a series of reverses and successes, yet he was never left with sufficient funds for the most ordinary payments. If he wanted to leave the mean, malodorous boarding-house which constantly humbled his pride, he must first pay his landlady a month's board and lodging, and then buy furniture for the rooms he must take, in keeping with his pretensions as a young man of fashion. He could never afford it. To have money in hand for gambling, Rastignac would buy watches and gold chains at an exorbitant price at his jeweler's out of his winnings, and then, when his luck was out, take them to the pawnbroker, that melancholy but discreet friend of youth. But invention and dash both deserted him when it was a question of paying for board and lodging, or of buying tools absolutely necessary for cultivation of the fashionable life. Vulgar necessity, debts contracted for needs which were past and done with, held no inspiration now. Like most people who lived from hand to mouth, he waited to the last moment to pay off those debts that steady, respectable people regarded as sacred engagements. He was like Maribor, who never paid his baker's bill until it presented itself in the formidable form of a bill of exchange. About this time, when Rastignac had been unlucky and had run into debt, it came home to him that he could not possibly continue this existence without some fixed source of income. But even as he groaned in the thorny discomfort of his precarious situation, he felt he could not bear to sacrifice the pleasures of this extravagant way of living, and determined to continue it at all costs. The castle in the air he had built, with reckoning the chances of fortune favoring his pursuit of wealth, became more and more chimerical, and the real obstacles grew. His intuition into the secrets of the new singing household had shown him clearly that if he were to use love as a stepping stone to success, he must lose all sense of shame, and renounce the generous ideas that freedom, that redeem the sins of youth. This life, outwardly so splendid, but gnawed by all the worms of remorse within, whose fleeting pleasures were dearly paid for by the enduring pains, had become his way of life. He had embraced it. He wallowed in it, making himself a bed, like la distre à la bruyère, in this muddy ditch. But like la distre, he had as yet soiled his only clothing. "So we've killed the mandarin, have we?" Biankin said to him one day as they rose from the table. "Not yet," he replied, "but he's at his last gasp." The medical student took this for a joke, but it was not meant for one. Eugene had looked thoughtful during the meal, which was the first dinner he had taken at the boarding house for a long time. Instead of going out when dessert was on the table, he had remained in the dining room, sitting near Mademoiselle Trelifer, and giving her an expressive glance from time to time. A few boarders still sat there, too, eating nuts. Others were walking up and down, continuing a discussion they had begun at the table. The boarders usually lingered after a meal for a longer or shorter period, determined by their interest or lack of interest in the conversation, and the more or less sluggish frame of mind engendered by the processes of digestion, and went out one by one when they felt like it. In winter, the last one rarely left the dining room before 8 o'clock, and when the four women had it to themselves, they made up for the silence which they were obliged by their sex to keep when the room was full of men. Vautrin had been struck by Eugene's preoccupation, but he remained in the dining room, although he had at first seemed to be in a hurry to leave. He placed himself in such a position as not to be observed by Eugene, who must have thought he had gone. Then, instead of leaving with the boarders who went out, he took up an observation surreptitiously in the drawing-room. He had read the student's mind, and suspected that a crisis was at hand. Rastignac, indeed, found himself in a perplexing situation of a kind that many young men must have experienced. Whether Madame de Nucingen really loved him, or was merely playing with him, she had made Rastignac suffer all the pains of a genuine passion, and had availed herself for his benefit at every subterfuge in the art of feminine evasiveness, as practice in petty. Although she had compromised herself by appearing in public with Madame de Basson's cousin, and so bound him to her, she hesitated to give him the lover's privilege everyone thought he enjoyed. For the last month she had so worked upon his feelings, so to affect his heart. If the student had thought himself the master in the early days of his attachment, Madame de Nucingen had since gained the upper hand by her diplomatic treatment, the effect of which had been to rouse up in Eugene every instinct, good and bad, of the last 2 or 3 men that made up a young Parisian. Was it a calculated stroke of policy on her part? Not so. Women are always true, even when their actions appear most equivocal, because they are yielding to some natural impulse. Perhaps it was because she had let this young man gain an ascendancy over her so quickly, and had shown him so much affection, that Delphine later appeared to change her mind about her concessions, or took pleasure in denying them, in an impulse to reassert her injured dignity. It is so natural to a Parisian woman to hesitate when she is on the verge of being carried away by passion, to try the heart of the man to whom she was about to commit her future. All Madame de Nucingen's hopes had been betrayed once, and her fidelity to a selfish young egotist had been treated with contempt. She had good reason to be distrustful. Perhaps she had perceived a certain lack of respect in Eugene's manner toward her, for the oddness of their situation had affected him, and his head had been turned by his rapid success. He was so young, she probably wanted to impress him, to appear as a sort of consequence in his eyes, after having counted for so little in the eyes of the man who had deserted her. She did not wish Eugene to believe her an easy conquest, just because he knew that she had belonged to a de Marsay. And then, after suffering the degradation of submitting to a heartless and inhuman young rake, she found it so sweet to wander in the flower-strewn realm of true love that she must have wanted to linger long, in a dreamy enjoyment of its every aspect, to listen to the murmur of its streams and let its pure, soft breezes caress her cheeks. The true lover was playing for the sins of a false one, Such feminine inconsistency will unfortunately continue to be met with so long as men do not know how many flowers are mown down in a young woman's heart by the first sharp blasts of treachery. Whatever the reason, Delphine was playing with Rastignac, and took pleasure in playing with him, no doubt because she knew that he loved her, and was sure she could put an end to his trouble as soon as it suited her woman's royal good pleasure. For the sake of his self-respect, Eugene was not willing to let his first engagement with love end in defeat, and he persisted in his attack like a sportsman who will let nothing stop him from bringing down the partridge in celebration of his first feast of St. Hubert. His anxiety, his wounded vanity, his despair, however groundless it may have been, bound him more and more closely to this woman. All Paris credited him with the conquest of Madame de Nucingen, and yet he was as far from achieving it as he had been on the day when he had first met her. He had yet to learn that the fascination of young men's coquetry is sometimes more delightful than the pleasures of secure possession of her love, and he fell into blind rages. At this time, when she fought about with love, Eugene enjoyed the early fruits of love's springtime. These were becoming as expensive as they were green, tart, yet delicious to the taste. Sometimes, seeing himself without a penny, and without any prospect for the future, he thought, in spite of his own conscience, of the chance of wealth which Vautrin had showed him to be possible in a marriage with Mademoiselle Taillefer. And now an hour had come when his poverty spoke with so eloquent a tongue that he yielded almost involuntarily to the wiles of the terrible Sphinx whose stare had so often held him in a spell. When Poirier and Mademoiselle Marqueneux went upstairs to their room, Rastignac believed that he was alone with Mademoiselle Taillefer, except for Madame Vauquer and Madame 𝐎𝐥𝐝, who were knitting woolen sleeves for themselves and dozing over the stove. And he looked so tenderly at her that she lowered her eyes. "Perhaps something is worrying you, Monsieur Eugene," she said after a pause. "Hasn't every man got something to worry about?" answered Rastignac. "If we men were sure of being loved, truly loved with a devotion which would make up for the sacrifices which we are always ready to make, then perhaps we shouldn't have any worries." Victorine only gave him a look in answer, but its meaning could not be mistaken. "You, mademoiselle, for instance, think you are sure of your heart today, but could you answer for its never changing?" A smile quivered on the poor girl's lips. It was as if a ray of light had leapt from her soul, and it made her face so radiant that Eugene was startled at the outburst of feeling he had provoked. "Ah! But suppose you became rich and happy tomorrow, suppose an immense fortune fell from the clouds for you, would you still love the poor young man who found favor in your eyes in your days of poverty?" She nodded her head sweetly. "A very unhappy young man." She nodded again. "What nonsense are you talking there?" exclaimed Madame Vauquer. "Never mind," replied Eugene. "We understand each other." "So, Monsieur le Chevalier Eugene de Rastignac is to be betrothed to Mademoiselle Victorine Taillefer," said a deep voice, and Vautrin appeared suddenly at the dining-room door. "Ah, how you startled me!" cried Madame 𝐎𝐥𝐝 and Madame Vauquer together. "I might choose worse," said Eugene, laughing. He had never in his life felt such a cruel pang as that which shot through him at the sound of Vautrin's voice. "No bad jokes, gentlemen," said Madame 𝐎𝐥𝐝. "Let us go upstairs, my dear." Madame Vauquer followed her two boarders, intending to spend the evening with them, and so save candlelight and fire. Eugene was left face to face with Vautrin. "I knew very well you would come round to it," Vautrin said in his usual imperturbable coolness. But look here, I have as much delicacy as the next man. Don't make up your mind just now. You're not as chirpy as usual. You have debts. I want your calm, good sense to bring you round to my way of thinking, not passion or desperation. Perhaps you need 1,000 crowns or so. Here they are, if you want them. And that fiend in human form took out a pocketbook and extracted 3 banknotes, which he fluttered before the student's eyes. Eugene was in a cruel fix. He had debts of honor. He owed 100 louis to both the Marquis d'Ajuda and the Comte de Treize. He had not got the money, and because this had not dared to go to spend the evening at Madame de Restaud's, where he was expected. It was one of those informal parties at which the guests drink tea and eat little cakes, but at which it is possible to lose 6,000 francs playing whist. After what you have told me, monsieur, said Eugene, trying to hide the convulsive tremor which shook him, you must see that I cannot possibly lay myself under an obligation to you. Oh, well, I should have been disappointed if you had said anything else, replied his tempter. You are a fine, high-principled young man, as proud as a lion, and as tender as a girl. You would be a fine haul for the devil's bag. I like youngsters to have such stuff in them. When you have worked your way through a few more conscientious scruples, you will see the world as it is. A man who knows what he's about acts a virtuous part in a few scenes, that he can do clearly what he likes amid great applause from the idiots in the gallery. In a few days you will be with us. Ha! If you would only let me be your tutor, I would make you achieve the summit of ambition. You would only have to form a wish to have it instantly gratified, whatever you might wish for, honors, riches, women. The whole civilized world would flow with milk and honey for you. You would be our splendid child, our Benjamin. We would put all ourselves out of the way, for your sake, with pleasure. Any obstacle in your path would be razed to the ground. Do you cherish scruples still? So you take me for a scoundrel, do you? Well, Monsieur de Troyes, a man of quite as much integrity as you possess, or rather think you still possess, put through some little deals with brigands, and did not consider that had tarnished his honor. You don't choose to be under an obligation to me. Don't let that stand in your way. Vautrin went on, not troubling to hide a smile. Take these scraps of paper and write down on this. He pulled out a piece of stamped paper. Accepted the sum of 3,500 francs, payable in 12 months' time. Date it. The interest is still enough to relieve you of all scruples. You can call me a Jew, and need feel no gratitude. I don't mind you despising me now. I'm sure that you'll feel differently later on. You will find unfathomable depths in my nature, vast, concentrated forces that fools call vices. But you will never find me mean-spirited or ungrateful. In short, I am neither a pawn nor a bishop, but a castle, my young friend. What manner of man are you? Eugene exclaimed. Were you born to torment me? Certainly not. I'm a good-natured fellow who is willing to soil his own hands so that you might keep yours clean and be raised out of this law for the rest of your days. Do you wonder why I should show you such devotion? Well, I'll tell you one of these days. I'll whisper a word in your ear. I startled you at first when I gave you a glimpse of the mechanism of the social machine, and put you up to the ropes. But your first fright will pass off like a conscript's on the battlefield. You will get used to regarding men as soldiers who have made up their minds to die in the service of those who are crowned kings by their own hands. Times have changed indeed. Once you said to a rascal, "Here are 100 crowns, kill Monsieur so-and-so for me," and you ate your supper in peace after giving a man his quietus for a mere flea bite. But now I propose to help you to a handsome fortune at a nod, from which compromises you not at all. And you shilly-shally, this age has no backbone. Eugene signed the draft and handed it over in exchange for the banknotes. Now then, let's talk sense, Vautrin went on. I mean to leave this country in a few months for America, and go and plant my tobacco. I will send you the cigars of friendship. If I take money, I will help you. If I have no children, which is likely to be the case, I am not anxious to plant scions of my own stock here. I will leave you my fortune. Well, what do you think of that? Is that acting like a friend? But I am fond of you, and sacrificing myself for someone else is my passion. I have done it before. You see, my lad, I live in a sphere raised above that of other men. I consider actions as means to an end, and the end is all I see. What is a man's life to me? Not that. And he snapped his thumbnail against his teeth. A man is everything to me, or nothing at all. He is less than nothing if he is a poirier. You can crush him like a bug. He is flat and smelly. But a man is a god when he is like you. He is no longer a piece of mechanism covered with skin, but a theater where the finest sentiments find play. And I live only for sentiments, fine thoughts and noble feelings. What is a sentiment but the whole world in a thought? Look at old 𝐎𝐥𝐝. His 2 daughters are the whole universe to him. They are the clue by which he finds his way through creation. Well, for me, and I have turned life inside out, only one real sentiment exists: friendship between man and man. Pierre and Jean-Pierre, such a bond as theirs is what I care for most. I know Venice preserved by heart. Have you seen many fellows staunch enough when a comrade says, "Come and bury a corpse," or go without batting an eyelid or bothering him with a sermon? I have done it. I wouldn't talk like this to everyone, but you are not like an ordinary man. I can tell you everything because you can understand it. You will not mess about much longer in these swamps with the bloated pygmies that surround us here. Well, I need say no more. You will marry. We may both carry our point. Mine is cold steel, and I never yield it. Ha ha! Vautrin went out quickly to avoid hearing the student's protest, so that he might not embarrass him. He seemed to understand the resistance that men still offer when almost defeated, the shadow boxing they indulge in, which serves to bolster their self-respect and justify their blameworthy actions in their own eyes. He may do as he likes. I will certainly not marry Mademoiselle Taillefer, said Eugene to himself. Though this man appalled him. The very cynicism of his ideas, with the audacity with which he used society to serve his own ends, made him loom larger in the student's eyes. But the thought of a compact with him threw Eugene into a fever. When he felt a little calmer, he dressed, called for a cab, and went to Madame de Restaud's. For some days the Countess had been increasingly attentive to him, and she saw that the young man's every step was a triumphal advance into the fashionable world, and foresaw that he might some day possess formidable power. He paid Messieurs de Trélez and de Ajudo, played whist for part of the evening, and won back all that he had lost. Like most of men who have their way to make and are more or less fatalistic, Eugene was superstitious, and it pleased him to regard his luck as a reward from heaven for his perseverance on the right path. Next morning, he lost no time before asking Vautrin if he still held the bill he had given him, and when Vautrin replied in the affirmative, Eugene paid back the 3,000 francs with a not unnatural satisfaction. "Everything is going well," Vautrin said to him. "But I am not your accomplice," said Eugene. I know," Vautrin broke in. "You are still behaving like a child. You let a painted devil bar your way." 2 days later, Poyot and Mademoiselle Martineau were to be found seated on a bench in the sun by a lonely pathway in the Jardin des Plantes. Can you hear the weed whacker outside? How long has that been going on? Well, that's Paris for you. I cannot see any reason for your scruples, mademoiselle. This Monsieur 𝐎𝐥𝐝 was saying. His Excellency, Monsieur le Minister for Police. His Excellency, Monseigneur, the Minister for Police, echoed Poirier. Yes, His Excellency is taking interest in the matter, said Gondoreau. Gondoreau. It is not easy for everyone to believe that Poirier, a retired clerk, and no doubt a man of middle-class virtues, although lacking in intelligence, continued to listen to the so-called gentleman of means from the Rue Buffon, once that gentleman had uttered the word police, and let the face of a detective from the Rue de Jerusalem peer from the mask of a decent man. Nothing, however, was more natural. If one considers what had already been noted by certain observers, although nothing had been published on the subject yet, one may understand better the particular species Poirier belonged to in the great family of fools. There is a race of quill drivers only found in the columns of the budget between the first degree of latitude, which includes salaries of 1,200 francs, a kind of administrative Greenland, and the third degree, where salaries begin to warm up from 3,000 to 6,000 francs, a temperate region where bonuses acclimatize themselves and flourish in spite of the difficulties of cultivation. A marked characteristic of that hiring race, and one which best reveals the feebleness and narrow limits of his mental capacity, is a kind of involuntary, automatic, instinctive respect for instinctive respect for the Grand Lama of every ministry, who is known to the rank and file only by an illegible signature and by his title, His Excellency Monseigneur le Ministre, 5 words which produce as much effect as the Il Bondo Cani of the Caliph de Baghdad, and which in the eyes of this spiritless tribe represent a sacred power from which there is no appeal. As the Pope is infallible in the eyes of Catholics, so His Excellency is administratively infallible in the eyes of petty officials. His acts, his words, and those done or uttered in his name are all invested with his particular luster. His cloak covers everything, and legalizes whatever is done by his order. His very title, Excellency, attests the purity of his intentions and the righteousness of his wishes, and serves as a passport for ideas that otherwise would not be entertained for a minute. Acts that these poor people would not do for their own interests are done eagerly if the words His Excellency are uttered. The government departments, like the army, have their system of passive obedience, a system which stifles the conscience, destroys the individual utterly, and ends in time by making a man nothing more than a screw or a nut in the administrative machine. And so, Monsieur Gonduru, who seemed to be able to size men up, recognizing Poirier at once as one of these bureaucratic fools, brought out the Deus Ex Machina, the magic words, His Excellency, at the proper moment when he was unmasking his batteries and needed to dazzle the man. He took Poirier to be the male equivalent of the Maquenu woman, and Mademoiselle Maquenu seemed to him the female form of Poirier. If His Excellency himself, His Excellency the Minister, that makes a great difference, said Poirier. I think I spoke that line with a bit too much dignity. Redact that emotion. You hear what this gentleman says, and I think you trust his judgment, said the sham man of means, addressing Mademoiselle Maquenu. Well, now, His Excellency is absolutely certain at this very moment that this so-called Vautrin, lodging in the Maison Vauquer, is a convict escaped from the Talon convict prison, where he was known by the name of Cheat Death. Oh, Cheat Death, said Poirier. He is a very lucky man if he has earned that nickname. Well, yes, replied the detective. He owes the nickname to his luck in saving his skin in all the extremely risky schemes he has carried out. The man is dangerous, you must understand. He has qualities which raise him above the ruck. The very thing he was sentenced for brought him no end of honor in his own gang. What? He's a man of honor, is he? Cried Poirier. In a way, according to his own ideas. He agreed to take the responsibility for another man's crime. It was a forgery committed by a very fine young man whom he had taken a fancy to, a young Italian, a bit of a gambler, who has since gone into the army there and has behaved himself and done very well. But if His Excellency the Minister for Police is sure that Monsieur Vautrin is this Cheat Death, why should he need my help? Said Mademoiselle Maquenu. Ah, yes, indeed, said Poirier. If the Minister, as you have done us the honor of telling us, has any kind of certainty is not the word. He only suspects it. You will soon understand how the land lies. Jacques Collins, alias Cheat Death, is explicitly trusted by every convict in 3 prisons, and they have appointed him to be their agent and banker. He makes a good thing out of this business. Of course it takes a man of mark. Ha, ha, do you see the pun, mademoiselle? Said Poirier. This gentleman calls him a man of mark, because he is marked, branded, you know. The so-called Vautrin, the detective continued, received the convict's money, invests it for the gentleman, looks after it and holds it at their disposal if they escape, or gives it to their family if they leave a will, or to their mistress when they draw on him for them. The mistresses? You surely mean their wives? Remarked Poirier. No, sir. Criminals don't usually marry their sweethearts. We call these illegitimate connections concubines. Then they all live in a state of concubinage? That follows. Oh, dear me, said Poirier. That's a scandal. His Excellency ought not to tolerate. As you have the honor of seeing His Excellency, it's up to you, since you seem to have philanthropic ideas, so let him know about the immoral behavior of these people. They set a very bad example for the rest of society. But the government does not hold them up as models of all virtues, my dear sir. That's true. All the same, sir, allow me— Just let the gentleman say what he wants to tell us, dearie, said Mademoiselle �絵𝐥𝐿. You see, it's like this, mademoiselle, went on Gondereau. The government may have a considerable interest in getting hold of an illicit hoard of money. They say it amounts to a pretty penny. Cheat Death rakes in large quantities of cash, not only from his convict friends, but from the Society of the 10,000 as well. 10,000 thieves! Exclaimed Poirier in alarm. No, the Society of 10,000 is an association of high-class sharks, men who go for big money and won't touch a piece of business unless there is 10,000 francs in it for them. The pick of our customers who are sent straight to the assize courts when they come up for trial belong to this society. They know the code and never risk making themselves liable to the death penalty if they are nabbed. Colin is their confidential agent, their legal advisor. His immense resources have made it possible for him to build up a sort of counter-detective system of his own with very extensive ramifications, which it is quite impossible to unearth, although we have kept him under close observations for a year. With spies all around him, we have not yet been able to drag his little game into the day of light. And so his hoard of money and his brains are always at the service of vice, supply the funds for crime, and maintain a standing army of scamps who wage incessant war against society. If we can catch Cheat Death and seize his money bags, we shall strike at the root of this evil. And that's why this scheme has become a state affair. A highly important piece of official business likely to bring great kudos to those who lend a hand to help us carry it out. Why, you yourself, sir, might very well be asked to work for the government again. They might make you secretary to a commissary of police. And that need not prevent you from still drawing your retiring pension. But, interposed Mademoiselle �絵𝐥𝐿, why does Cheat Death not make off with the money? Oh, said the detective, if he robbed the convicts, he would be followed wherever he went by a man told off to kill him. Besides, it's not so easy to carry off a chest of money as it is to run away with a nice young lady. Colin is not the sort of chap who would do anything like that. In any case, he would think himself disgraced. Monsieur, said Poirier, you are right. He would be utterly disgraced. All this does not explain why you don't simply come and take him, observed Mademoiselle �絵𝐥𝐿. Well, mademoiselle, I'll tell you. But keep your gentleman friend from interrupting me, he added in a whisper, or we shall never have done. The old boy must find it hard to get people to listen to him. Cheat Death, when he came here, got into the skin of an honest man. He made himself into a good Parisian citizen, lodging in an unpretentious boarding house. He's no fool, believe me. You won't catch him with chaff. Then Monsieur Vautrin is a generally respected man, and he does a good deal of business. Naturally, said Poirier to himself. If the minister were to make a mistake and arrest a real Vautrin, public opinion would be against him, and he would fall foul of every businessman in Paris. Monsieur le Préfet de Police is in a ticklish position. He has enemies, and if a blunder were made, they would take advantage of the outcry and clamor the opposition would be sure to set up, to have him sent packing, and then the people who want his position themselves would be happy. We must handle this business just as we did the Cognard affair, the sham Comte de Saint-Helene. If he had been a real Comte de Saint-Helene, we should have blotted our copybook, and so we must make quite sure that we know what we are doing. Oh. Okay, I hear you, world. We'll cut it off there if we can't even hear ourselves talk. We'll continue with the police commissioner's conversation with Poirier and Machinu tomorrow, when we have some peace from the outside world. I guess that's impossible, isn't it? Okay. Oh, it's gone. Oh my god, it's gone. Never mind. We were just getting our gears all racked for no reason. Okay, I'm sorry. Let's continue. Hell yeah. Let's continue with some coffee. Hell yeah. To be fair, in St. Paul today, it's utterly gorgeous. The sky is absolutely sapphire blue, and the sun is perfectly comfortable, if not a little bit hot. So, yeah. Good on you guys. Okay, continuing. Opposition would be sure to set him up, to have him sent packing, and then the people who want his business themselves would be happy. We must handle this business just as we did with the Cognard affair, the sham Comte de Saint-Helene. If he had been a real Comte de Saint-Helene, we should have blotted our copybook. And so we must make quite sure we know what we're doing. Yes, but what you need is a pretty woman, said Mademoiselle Machinu briskly. Cheat Death would not let a woman come near him. Let me tell you a secret. He doesn't like women. Still, I fail to see what use I should be in verifying his identity, supposing I did consent to do it for 2,000 francs. Nothing easier, said the stranger. I will give you a little bottle containing a dose of liquid which induces a fit, like an epileptic fit, but quite harmless. You can put the drug into wine or coffee, it doesn't matter which. You carry your man to a bed at once, and undress him to find out if he's dying. As soon as you are alone, you give the clap on the shoulder. You give him a clap on the shoulder, and lo and behold, you see the branded letters appear. But that's no trouble at all, said Poirier. Well, will you do it? Gondero asked the old maid. But, my dear sir, said Mademoiselle Machinu, supposing there are no letters, should I still have the 2,000 francs all the same? No. How much will you give me for my troubles, then? 500 francs. You want me to do a thing like that for so little. Whatever the result might be, it will just lie as heavy on my conscience, and I must consider my conscience, monsieur. I assure you, said Poirier, that this lady has a great deal of conscience, besides which she is a very amiable person and very clever. Well, Mademoiselle Machinel went on, give me 3,000 francs if he is cheat death, and nothing at all if he is an ordinary man. Done, said Gondero, but on condition that the thing is carried out tomorrow. I can't settle that now, my dear sir. I must consult my confessor. You are as slippery as an eel, said the detective as he rose to go. I'll see you tomorrow, then. And if you should want to see me in a hurry, go to the Petite Rue Sainte-Anne, at the end of the Cour de la Sainte-Chapelle. There is only one door under the archway. Ask for Monsieur Gondero. The sufficiently striking name, Cheat Death, caught Biancan's ears as he was returning from Cuvière's lecture, and he overheard the famous chief of the Surete say, "Done." "Why did you not close with him? It would be 300 francs a year," Poirier said to Mademoiselle 𝐎𝐥𝐝. "Why didn't I?" returned the old maid. "It needs thinking over. If Monsieur Vautrin is this cheat death, we might make a better bargain if we come to some arrangement with him. Still, if he was to ask for money, the alarm would be sounded, and he is just the sort of man who would make off without paying a penny, and that would be an abominable sell." "Suppose you did warn him," said Poirier. "Didn't that gentleman tell us that he was watched? You would lose everything." "Anyhow, thought, Mademoiselle 𝐎𝐥𝐝, I don't like the man at all. He can't speak to me without saying something disagreeable." "And you can do better than that," Poirier continued. "As that gentleman said, and he seems to be a very proper sort of man, besides being very tidily dressed. As he said, it is an act of obedience to the laws to rid society of a criminal, however virtuous he may be. Once a thief, always a thief. But if he should take it into his head to murder us all, why, bless my soul, we should be responsible for those murders, without taking into account that we should be the first victims of them." Mademoiselle 𝐎𝐿𝐥𝐝 was absorbed in thought, and did not give much heed to the remarks falling one after another from Poirier's mouth, like drops of water from a leaky tap. Once he had started on his string of utterances, since Mademoiselle 𝐎𝐿𝐥𝐝 did not intervene to stop him, the old fellow kept on talking as if he had been wound up. The first subject he broached led him by way of one parenthesis after another to others entirely different, and he would go on and on without putting a period to any topic on the way. By the time they reached the Maison Vauquer, a chain of examples, quotations, and incidental allusions had brought him to an account of the evidence he had given in the case of the Sieur Rognoleux versus Dame Morin, which he had appeared as a witness for the defense. It did not escape his companion's eye that when they went in that Eugene de Rastignac was engaged in an intimate conversation with Mademoiselle Taillefer, which was of such thrilling interest that neither of them had any attention to spare for the two older boarders as they passed through the dining room. "It was bound to end like that," Mademoiselle 𝐎𝐿𝐥𝐝 remarked to Perriot. "They've been making eyes at each other for a week past in a way that would hale the heart from your body." "Yes," he answered. "So she was found guilty." "Who was?" "Madame Morin." "I am talking about Mademoiselle Victorine," said the woman, entering Poirier's room without appearing to notice that what she was doing. "And you answer Madame Morin? Who may she be?" "What can Mademoiselle Victorine be guilty of? She's guilty of falling in love with Monsieur Eugene de Rastignac, and she's going ahead full tilt, not knowing where she is going. Poor innocent." That morning, Madame de Nucingen had driven Eugene to despair. Oh, the wife of a rich German banker who hates life. Okay, thank you for bearing with this beautiful day, trying to seep into our reading. Don't blame it. Let's continue tomorrow, eh? Later from the underground. Bye.